Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to our global audience, and welcome back to the Commons. The past couple of months have really turned our lives upside down. Some of our projects that we had worked on for years have come to a standstill. For others, we had to retool and learn new software. All that happening while we were sitting at home with our children around because they couldn't go to daycare. And also sometimes or often we had to worry about our families living in other countries that we couldn't travel to because of the travel restrictions. And we are yet to know more about the impending economic crisis and its true and full impact. So COVID-19 certainly has taken a toll, or it has also tested our resilience. But mental health was an issue even before COVID-19, as a study showed that was published earlier this week by WHO, the World Health Organization, suggesting that just depression and anxiety have an impact that causes a loss of productivity of $1 trillion every year. And that was pre-COVID-19. And now the demand on mental health services has increased. And yet in the same study, WHO shows that in 93% of the countries, services were actually interrupted in the area of mental health. So mental health is precious, not only in economic terms, but also in terms of well-being. So we invite you to invest today into your mental health by learning more about the topic at our Commons event on occasion of the Mental Health Day, which we celebrate this week on the 10th of October. My name is Vivian Brunne, and I'm here to welcome you into the Commons. The Commons, Knowledge and Learning Commons, is an innovative learning platform for UN staff, permanent missions, and interns. And at the core of the Commons is co-production. And so we're really happy today that this event is a true co-production of the staff counselors' offices of the UN in Geneva, of OCHA, the Humanitarian Coordination Office, and of UNAIDS, the UN's program on HIV and AIDS. And let's meet now the speakers of today's event. We have with us today Mary Leahy, staff counselor of the UN in Geneva. She is trained as a clinical psychodynamic counselor and psychotherapist. And before coming to Geneva, she worked in Mali with the UN Medical Clinic. And prior to working for the UN, she spent 12 years working with the homeless population, supporting people with issues around substance abuse, sex workers, also dealing with domestic violence and counseling people newly diagnosed with HIV. Welcome, Mary. And we also have with us Jorge Sierralta, staff counselor at OCHA. He is a PhD clinical psychologist and has led different counseling units and promoted the welfare of UN staff in various challenging environments. He looks back on 15 years of experience in providing specialist psychological assessments, counseling, and crisis and mental health emergency services, mostly in Asia and Africa. Welcome. And last but not least, we have Nancy Baudouin, staff counselor at UNAIDS. She is an intercultural psychologist, and prior to UNAIDS, she worked with various other UN agencies, ITU, the Telecommunication Union, WMO, the Meteorological Organization, and OCHA, working with people both in the field and at headquarters. And before joining the UN, she provided psychosocial support in clinical settings for survivors of gender-based violence, human trafficking, and torture. Welcome, Nancy. So let me hand it over to our first speaker right away. We will hear more about the operations and workings of the Staff Counselor's Office at the UN in Geneva. And welcome, Mary Lee.
Thank you, Vivian. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. It's our pleasure to meet you all. So my name's Mary and I'm one of the staff counsellors here, and I will speak first and then I will hand over to Jorge and then Nancy. And we'll also show you today some short video clips from staff, and these staff have very kindly volunteered to be with us today and share their personal experiences. So we'll begin today by having a look at stigma around mental health and COVID-19. This year, World Mental Health Day is actually on Saturday, the 10th of October, but we decided to turn this day into 1 week of awareness. particularly as we see the impact that the pandemic COVID-19 is having on all of us. And that's right, on all of us, even as staff counsellors, we're not excluded. So the theme this year is mental health for all of us, and this means many things. Here, if you are in Geneva or Europe or the US, you may have very good access to professionals who can support you. But what about the staff in the field, in faraway locations? Some of you are joining us today, and perhaps you might have a poor internet connection, perhaps with no possibility of talking to a mental health specialist due to a lack of privacy. For example, you might share an office space, or you might live in a home with many others. We are thinking of you, and together with the team that are implementing the mental health strategy at the UN, we're thinking of how we can improve things for all of you and for all of us. So wherever you are during this time of crisis, which has been prolonged, it's normal to feel a range of emotions, from fear to loneliness, sadness, despair, irritability, fatigue, anger, hopelessness. The list goes on. But try to think that research shows that during a pandemic, experiences of anxiety and depression more than double. So remember, you're not on your own. This is affecting all of us. So what can we do about it? Today, we'll start our series of presentations to look at how can we break down the mystery that surrounds the world of mental health and the mind, and hopefully we can inspire you to learn more and to reach out for help for yourself and or for your loved ones or colleagues. And we do understand it's complicated, and sometimes it's hard to know where to begin. So we'll just go on to our next slide, please. So what are talking therapies? What is it that we do? So talking therapies are treatments which involve talking to a trained professional about your thoughts, feelings and behaviours. There are many different types, but they all aim to give you a safe time and a place to talk with someone who won't judge you. They will help you make sense of things and understand yourself better, help you resolve complicated feelings or find a way to live with them, and help us recognise unhelpful patterns in the way we might think or act, and find and make changes if this is what we want to do. So what's the difference between therapy and counselling? You might hear about people talking about counselling, therapy, psychotherapy, psychological therapy. Usually there's very little difference between what is meant by these terms. They all broadly refer to talking therapy as opposed to other types of treatment, such as medication and drug therapy. But therapy can help you manage and cope with difficult life events, such as bereavement, which could be losing someone close to you, or also bereavement in losing your job, relationship problems, upsetting or traumatic experiences, whether it's something recent or something that happened a long time ago. We all can experience difficult emotions such as grief, sadness, confusion or anger. And you know, for some people they think that therapy is an extreme option and that unless you get really bad, you should try to manage things on your own. But this isn't true. It's okay to try therapy at any point in your life, whatever your background. In fact, getting support from a therapist when you're not at a crisis point can be really helpful. It might feel easier to reflect on what's going on, and it could help you keep things from getting worse. So there are a couple of things that's important to remember. The relationship between yourself and your therapist is really important. So regardless of what style of talking therapy you choose, it's very important that you find someone that you trust and that you feel able to open up with, and this way you're more likely to have a positive experience. And you can choose, so you might go to someone and decide that you don't really like them, you don't feel they're understanding you, or you don't feel that connection. So it's okay to tell them that and then to start with somebody new. So therapy works very well on its own, or it can be something that you do alongside other treatments such as medication or even exercising, jogging, swimming, finding some way to let the anxiety and stress out of your body. So we often work in collaboration with doctors and psychiatrists who might prescribe a course of anti-anxiety medication or antidepressants. This is nothing to be ashamed of. Some of us may need a little help from time to time. And it doesn't mean that you'd have to take medication for your whole life, but it might be just there to help you get through a difficult period. So for us, we think of the brain as a network of nerve endings, and sometimes these nerve endings get fried and damaged. Medication just helps us to fix these nerve endings. It can pad them out, like putting a soothing cream on a bite or a sting. The medication in these tablets helps to work by providing a barrier and a protection for these fried nerves so they can heal. But it works best in partnership with talking therapies, because if you keep doing the same behavior or you find yourself in a difficult situation, it's hard for your brain to actually change and feel safe again. So it actually works very well if you do decide to take medication that you also try talking therapy. So it's not a quick fix, and sometimes it's not right for everyone, and you might have to try different styles. But do remember, often you can feel worse before you start to feel better, and it does take time. So there's different types of therapy. Like I said a little earlier, we pretty much all have a similar background, and things have evolved so much and continue to evolve. But for example, you could try counselling or interpersonal therapy, or you may have heard of what's called eye movement desensitization, and reprocessing, EMDR. So it's another talking therapy that's been developed to help people who have post-traumatic stress disorder. And for these people, they might have intrusive thoughts, memories, nightmares, flashbacks of traumatic events from their past. And the EMDR helps the brain reprocess these memories of the traumatic event so you can let go of them, but it's done in a safe environment. You're there with your therapist. And then another thing that's quite popular at the moment is mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, which just means that you will practice things like talking therapies, but also doing things like meditation, breathing exercises, helping you to ground yourself. And this helps for people, for example, who have anxiety or experience panic attacks. It can help us feel that mind and body connection and help us feel more in control of our behavior. So, sometimes you might feel your face going very red, or you'll physically feel your body getting really hot and your heart might start pounding. So with therapies and in the individual setting, you can work on finding little techniques that help you to calm down so that you'll be able to cope and manage in difficult situations. For example, in a meeting at work or something. So we'll just go to the next slide, please, Christian. Okay, so what about psychiatry? I mentioned it a little bit. The most important thing is that it's nothing to be afraid of. A psychiatrist is just a medical doctor who is an expert in mental health. They specialize in diagnosing and treating people with mental illness. They have a deep understanding of our physical and our mental health and how this can affect each other. So you might have heard of years ago, for example, when they looked at hysteria, particularly in women, or say Freud has a lot of interesting case studies about how he was a medical doctor and then people came to see him with things like paralysis where they couldn't walk, and then together they would think about an event that happened in their life around about the time when they actually couldn't physically walk. So it's very important not to be afraid of a psychiatrist and just think that they're here to help us. And in particular, they help people that have conditions such as schizophrenia, which might be something that's no fault of your own, it's inherited from a family member, and it's maybe triggered by a traumatic event or something really difficult in your life. But they can also help us with depression, bipolar disorder, which used to be called manic depression, but also things like eating disorders and addictions. And addictions cover gambling addictions, alcohol, drugs, all of those things. So it can be very difficult and complex to diagnose mental health conditions because we can't see it from the outside. But the good news is there's more research being done on the brain, and we're starting to be able to see how the brain works. And we can maybe start to see things like depression or problems within the brain. So, but if you've got something going on in your life and it's severe, maybe something has happened suddenly, or maybe even something as you might have suicidal thoughts, like a feeling of hopelessness, it's really important then to see a psychiatrist, because medication can help you to get through this difficult time. You can start by seeing the staff counsellor and then also working with your family doctor, who will refer you to a psychiatrist. So, for example, the psychiatrists, they'll offer you practical advice about your diet and nutrition, sleep, and other ways that you can help yourself get better. They will also help you explain, or help to explain your condition, and they will talk you through what's going on and what you can do to also help yourself get better. So the psychiatrist will only suggest treatments that are proven to be safe and effective. They're very well trained. They have at least 12 years of medical training, and they work as part of a team. So they will only recommend what works. They will tell you about side effects, how much it costs, and then it's up to you whether to agree to take the treatment or not. This won't be forced on you. Like in the olden days, things are different now. So after that heavy subject topic, we'll just go to the next slide, please. Okay. And whoops. Great, I hope you can see this. So this is just something to lighten up a little bit. So it's advice from a tree. And if you're interested in mindfulness or in anything like running, jogging, all those things, just think about what the tree does. It stands tall and proud. Think of yourself as a tree, you're strong. For example, remember your roots and connect with your natural beauty. So we'll just show you now as well some contact information here for the staff counsellors, which we'll also put over in the comments at the side. And we also have some resources to share with you if you're interested in this and you'd like to find out more and maybe do some reading. And now I'll hand over to Jorge for the next part. Thanks very much, everyone.
Hello, yes, hello, good afternoon, colleagues. It's a pleasure to be here, and we talk about stigma. My name is Jorge Sierralta. I am a clinical psychologist, but my career I started in the medical school, because like many families back in Peru, my father wanted to have a surgeon, a medical doctor in the family. And I started on the first year, I changed to mental health. And after graduation, after 10 years of studies, of course, my father, when he saw that I was a doctor in clinical psychology, he said that this is not a real doctor. And a few years later, he was diagnosed with diabetes and he was sent for treatment with a psychotherapist. And then he understood, of course, the value and what we can offer to people. So I will take you to a few slides. It's an interactive session. You will go to, I will encourage you to go use your mobile phone. The questions are very easy, and you have the code 195818. Let me just go on the first. So I want you to play, and there are a few questions, and we will discuss a little bit on how, on your understanding of some of the questions. So please go to Menti, just menti.com, Menti, just write menti.com, and the code is 195818. I think we can write also the code on the chat box if anyone has a problem. So please go to menti.com, and we wait just for a couple of minutes for you to join. So 195818, okay, and we'll see who will win this very nice and short quiz. The faster you answer, the more, of course, chances you have to win. And of course, we will send you hacks, virtual hacks from, I will say, the staff counseling unit. So we have more people joining. Thank you very much. Excellent. Excellent, excellent. Okay, so we give you 1 more minute. You can use a pseudonym. You don't. It's completely confidential. Also, we don't know who is answering what. So wow, so we have a number of people. So soon we will start, colleagues, and I will. We will 1 more person. So okay, we see a number of people, as you can see. We give you 1 more second, and we will start. Okay, let's, well, we see more people joining us. It's a pleasure to have you, all of you here. So we'll start with the first question. Mental health problems are common or not very common. Mental health problems are common or not very common. Some people are answering. 3, 2, 1. Time is up. 24 people got it right. Common, very common. So how common? I would like to call this a silent pandemic because of the number of people who suffer from mental health issues. According to WHO, I mean, we have the number of people. We will go Nadia, Julia, but I will come. According to WHO, 1 in 5 people will suffer from a mental health condition in any 1 year. So about 20% in a normal population, but of course, in crisis, in emergency places, the number is much higher. So let's go to the next question. Thank you. All of you got it right. Let's go to the next question. And the next question is mental illness. And you have cannot be treated, can be treated. And you have few seconds. 4, 3, 2. Yes, 1 person say cannot be treated. 29 people say can be treated. Of course, mental illness can be treated. And I think Mary also spoke about a little bit about this, about the options that people have with mental illness. Let's go to the next question, and we'll see who is. Of course, we have a number of people. Nadia, Julia, who is. Let's go to the next question. It's only 5 questions, or no, 4 questions. Let's go to the next. And the next question is, people with mental illness aren't able to work. True or false? I think that will not require a lot of time for you to answer this. 4, 3, 2, 1, and I guess, wow. So yes, people are able to work, and I will, of course, explain a little bit more about this. We have, I think, yeah, we have Julia, we have Nadia. 1 more question, 1 last question. That's question number 4. And let's see who will get it right. So mental health is we'll see. Mental health is, and you have 3 options. Time is up. Yes, it's an important part of overall health and well-being. We tend to differentiate between, I mean, physical health and mental health, but all is health. And we'll talk a little bit about this on this couple of slides. We'll see who won this. Of course, virtual hugs will go to Nadia. Yeah, Nadia is to Julia. Sorry, Julia. We're sending you virtual hugs to you. So let me just. And this is not a quiz, but please, I would like you to answer. Who do you think suffers or had suffered from depression? You have Michael Phelps, who was an Olympic medal. You have a very famous actor, yeah, Dane Johnson. You have an astronaut, Buzz Aldrin, you have Jim Carrey, you have Martin Luther King. I mean, you see the number, how many people voted for, the latest you have, Jim Carrey and Michael Phelps. So we'll give you a couple of seconds more, just for you. One more. So it's interesting to see a number. When I asked the question before, can somebody with a mental health condition be able to work? Of course, the answer is yes, because as people continue voting, as you can see from the, in fact, from the screen, all of them, they suffer from depression. Thinking about Martin Luther King, in fact, he attempted suicide twice. Was treated for depression. Jim Carrey, he acknowledged that he suffers and he had suffered from depression. So all Buzz Aldrin also had suffered from depression and continues to receive treatment. Very famous also Hollywood actor, Johnson, and also an athlete, Michael Phelps. So it's a possibility, of course, with support to be able to function well. Okay. I would like to make a little bit of a difference between mental health and physical illness. It's interesting how we approach to this issue. Very often, the person who suffers from a mental illness gets blamed. If we compare with the physical illness, the sufferer gets cared for. The sufferer is told, get over it. If you are facing a physical illness, might be cancer, or diabetes, the sufferer is told that they will be supported through it. Even in the work environment, if somebody suffers from depression or anxiety, is different. The treatment we treat the person is different if the person will suffer from cancer. The sufferer is told, stop attention seeking, and the sufferer is told, I am here if you need anything. Okay, the sufferer is told, you are weak and lazy. And of course, the sufferer is told, if it's a physical illness, that they are strong and courageous. Okay, so I mean, as you can see here, there is a difference on how we treat physical and mental illness, but both of them are health issues. So this is wrong and this is right. I would like to conclude. Very often we tend to confuse on what is mental health, and we think about mental health as mental illness, which is not the same. We have here minimum mental illness, maximum mental illness. Okay, you have here Nelson Mandela, as you can see here, Nelson Mandela with optimal mental health and well-being and minimum mental illness, despite the fact that he spent 27 years in captivity in prison. And you have Martin Luther King with depression until he died. He suffered from depression, but with support and treatment, good and optimal mental well-being, but with a mental illness. And then you have somebody who might be any of us who is having very poor mental health, probably not to the point of reaching a mental illness, but poor mental health. And then you have somebody who is forgotten by the society, who is having a mental illness, but also minimum mental well-being. So, colleague, with this, I would like to say thank you to you, and I will pass to Nancy. Nancy, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jorge.
Yeah, I will just stop sharing.
So I hope you can all see the PowerPoint. I'm going to be speaking more specifically about stigma now. Thank you, Jorge, for speaking a little bit already about the issues. I'm going to be asking you right now to visualize a specific scenario. So I'm going to be asking you, if you want, you're comfortable doing that, closing your eyes and visualizing the following scenario. Two colleagues speaking to each other. They haven't seen each other for a while, and chit-chatting and so forth. And then one of them says, I feel really stressed and down lately. So I'm just going to ask you to just tune into your self-awareness, which is really important in stigma and our automatic reactions and automatic judgments, which we all have. Just to tune in on what is your reaction when you hear or imagine hearing this colleague saying to the other, I feel really stressed and down lately. Is it positive? Is it empathy? Is it, oh, you know, going towards the person, or is it rather negative, recoiling away, or just get over it, or these kinds of reactions? So just tune in to your internal Mentimeter, as it were. We're now using just our internal reactions to tune into our self-awareness. Also, did you specifically visualize that colleague to be of any type of gender? Is it rather female or male, or perhaps none? Or any other attributes for that matter, age, color of skin, particular accents that you imagined, or nationalities. Just hone in on the attributes. And finally, did you imagine when you saw this conversation, the person who spoke up about not feeling well, any of you think that this could be a senior manager? Question mark to yourself for your own sake to be answered. From there, I'd like to follow straight into what we call stigma. So stigma is a deficient labeling, negative labeling, and in this case, we're looking at stigma associated with mental health in the UN. It generates discrimination towards staff labeled as having mental health issues. So we all learn such negative labelings and stigma at a very young age through cultural values in the societies and families as we grow up. There can be different layers of stigma, so this means multiple intersecting layers of mental conditions and other characteristics of the person's identity, such as mental issue plus gender discrimination, or mental issue racial discrimination. Why is mental health stigmatized? So Jorge just spoke about certain aspects of it. One of them is clearly cultural biases, which come, as I was saying before, from different cultural systems in which we grow up and which are around us, including organizational culture. So these are just some of the examples that can be associated with mental health. There could also be denial. I was speaking the other day to a colleague of mine who mentioned, with regards to her own home country, in my country, we're not even there yet. Mental health doesn't even exist. So it's not even on the radar screen. So you can imagine if somebody says how unwell they are about something that doesn't exist. What about, so in your own culture, I'm going to ask you to hone in again into your own self-awareness. If you think about mental health in your own home culture where you grew up, how is it regarded? Positively or negatively? And just have that, hold that in your mind, and then also think about the current organizational culture where you are. What is your perception? Is mental health accepted, or do you feel that it's got a negative label to it? One of the reasons that I think that mental health is so difficult is that it's invisible. What can't be seen is not real or serious. However, actually, we now know that it is visible, in fact. We know, for instance, that if someone's been depressed over a period of time, we actually see changes in brain scans and MRIs in terms of neuronal networks firing and changes in chemical regions of the brain. So actually, it is really there, just as, for instance, are some other illnesses such as Alzheimer's. They're there. They're not physically on the external visible. It's not like wearing a cast, but it's actually physically present if we know where to look for it. I'm going to invite you now to another scenario. So here you're at the start of the day, you're in the office, and you get a call from a coworker who tells you that they're on their way to work, but they had to stop on the side of the road because they were suddenly taken with very severe stomach cramps, which are extremely painful for that colleague. So I would like you to hone in on what you expect this colleague to do now. Would you generally expect them to continue to the office? or would you expect them to go home? And as you keep talking, this colleague then tells you that the cramps are due to stress. Is there any shift from your earlier reaction in terms of expectation? Would you say to that person, go home or go to the office, if you were to give them any advice? And finally, did you have in your mind's eye, as you visualize the scenario, any gender that came to your mind about the person who was telling you that they were feeling these stomach cramps and they were due to stress? I'd just like to say that on several occasions, very sadly, in different agencies where I've worked, I have had different colleagues come to me and confide that they were so stressed at the idea of going into work that they had to stop on their way to work and be sick on the side of the road because they were feeling so unwell. So these are actually things that do happen to us. And how do we relate to that unwell being in our colleagues and also within ourselves? Leading to the next slide, our worst critic is oftentimes our own self, our self-stigma. So these are some of the self-negative talks we can have. This means basically there's an issue because, of course, whilst it can be easier to walk away from other people's negative stigma, it's much harder to walk away from ourselves, okay? So this means basically that we've internalized the negative labelings of stigma into our own values and belief systems of what it constitutes to be a normal member of society, or that society may be. This eats away at our self-efficacy, our confidence, motivation levels, self-esteem, whilst it makes shoot up our shame and guilt, disempowers us, and so forth. And we also resort to avoidance. I hear this many times, and you will hear this in the videos that we're going to show you shortly, is all the isms like alcoholism or workaholism. A lot of people reporting they're very committed, very hard work, very expert at their work, and also reverting to really delving into work to forget about or not have to think about very painful thoughts and emotions. But that doesn't make them go away. Actually, that's the problem, because there is no health without mental health. Again, we'll see more about specific stories in a short while. And then also another thing that it creates is a vicious negative cycle from withdrawal to isolation, from isolation to loneliness, loneliness to depression, which leads to further withdrawal. As you can see, not really a good downward spiral. So now again, asking you to hone in on self-awareness. Last times that you were feeling mentally distressed, again, were you generally critical or supportive of yourself? What were the internal voices that you had going at you? Okay. So what can you do about it? What can we all do about it? Because I really think that this is, as Jorge was saying, is a common issue, and self-stigma is certainly very, very common for most of us. Okay. Identify those that make you feel positive about yourself, about life, to support you generally, and avoid those who run you down or those who have, negative judgments. I realize some people, they're part of our everyday, but at least try and put things in perspective when it comes to their negative judgments. Notice and value your strengths. This comes with practice, comes with awareness. Sometimes you might need some counseling support from the outside, as Mary gave you some more details about who you can turn to, and identify positive copings, especially not forcibly the short-term coping, such as, I have to keep working really hard, so I'll keep on having caffeine, or I'll quit the physical exercise, got no time for it. Over the long run, that comes back to actually become a negative coping. Notice your negative internal voices and challenge them. Okay, just all negative voices we were talking about earlier in the earlier slide. Challenge them when you hear them, and voice your positive feelings. Okay, encouraging your own self, such as, yes, I'm a worthwhile person. Physical exercise. This is really important to actually get rid of all the stress hormones that we have in our body when we are feeling under a lot of stress, anxiety, and and so forth. It's the only way to really get rid of it quite quickly in our body, and very important because otherwise it can deal and turn into even more complicated issues for ourselves and physical ailments. Reach out for help if your mental health is really not well, okay? And be kind to yourself. It's really a challenging thing to put back into consideration and start questioning our stigmas, a lifetime of stigmatizing values that can be arduous and painful, okay? So impact of stigma at work, it's everyone's business. I think that, as we probably, many of us already know, it has a definite impact on productivity, creativity, motivation of the workforce, leads to absenteeism, presenteeism. That means actually going into work but being unable to focus and concentrate because we are so taken off kilter and off balance by the mental health issues that are very present for us, and also leads to high turnover. And these can be very valuable staff members, okay? So it creates also a heavier workload for those staff left behind, also creating a vicious cycle of too much pressure, etc., etc. Stigma stops personnel from getting help, okay? And takes longer for staff to recover as a result, obviously. I was listening to a program about this the other day in the United States, where mental health is generally considered as quite common. It was still saying that stigma today means that people are usually delay 8 to 10 years before they reach out for help. Imagine, that's a long time. It also impedes career opportunities. If we're feeling very run down or, for instance, burnt out, obviously when there's going to be a career opportunity that arises, we might not even feel that we have the confidence to go for it, the energy to go for it, or if we do, really be at our best to perform as highly as we could. Okay, psychosomatic diseases, that's also a well-known factor nowadays, for instance, ulcers, skin rashes, musculoskeletal pain, and so forth. And high levels of what is coined as just stress can trigger in the long run cancer, heart disease, strokes, and so forth. So it is really serious. And again, no health without mental health. So what can we do for a stigma-free workplace? So just a quick reminders, see the person as a whole. We are not defined by a label, just as we're not defined by just a diagnosis. See the person as a whole. Challenge misconceptions if you hear them being spoken around you at the workplace or outside of the workplace about spreading stereotypes and myths. Minding our own words, using respectful language and avoiding labeling even as a joke, such as "you're so OCD," obsessive compulsive disorders being said about people who are very neat, or "this is bipolar weather going from hot to cold, cold to hot," or whatever. Let's avoid spreading the stigmas. And then offering support. So don't be afraid to reach out to your colleagues if you see that they're really not doing well. Being supported and yet still holding your boundaries. You're not supposed to be the superheroes, and also duty of care to actually encourage people to go and get professional help. That's really important. And finally, at the institutional level, raising awareness about resources for mental health, ensuring that there's sufficient of it and of high quality, and facilitating that staff can access and personnel can access to those resources. Avoiding structural stigma at organizational level, also very important. Tips for leaders, what can you do? Senior leadership, please get involved. This actually demonstrates organizational commitment. Why? Because it comes trickling down, top down, very important. All people managers, leading by example, here again, very important. Talking about your own stressors in the teams. This paves a safe way for staff to feel that they can actually talk about their own conditions and destigmatizes mental health, which is a very common issue. Listen and talk to your staff, ask how they're doing, and really actually listen and empathize. Put yourself in their situation, in their shoes, okay? And finally, observe and notice what's not voiced. Notice these little things. If you have a staff member that is usually quite bubbly and vocal and all of a sudden you don't hear from them and so forth, just really have that in your mind. As Mary was saying, we're going through some really tough times in this protracted crisis with COVID. It's really stressful and difficult for many people, pretty much, I think, all of us are impacted. So let's be kind to ourselves and others. And on this, I will finish with the words of Ruby Wax, who's an American-British actress, mental health activist and lecturer, who says, "It's so common, it could be anyone. The trouble is nobody wants to talk about it. And that makes everything worse." But I'm happy to say that we actually do have some staff, very brave staff at the UN, who stepped up to bravely tell their stories about mental health, breaking the silence to help break the stigma. Thank you.
My name is Alison Holmes and I'm the Director of HRM here at UNAIDS. I'm here to talk about an episode of trauma in my life which taught me that mental well-being is a precarious state and that all of us are vulnerable to triggers that can tip us over into mental distress. I think some people are more vulnerable than others, but all of us are vulnerable. My trigger was a miscarriage some 2 or 3 months into a first pregnancy. There's a history of what I would describe as mental fragility in my family. My mother suffered from depression for a while, and my sister had a breakdown in her late teens. But I was generally the one they turned to for support, and I thought I was pretty resilient. It's easy to be rational now, but my miscarriage affected me in a very deep way. There were weeks of crying uncontrollably day after day. I couldn't think or focus on anything else. I completely turned in on myself and I just couldn't function in any way. I couldn't exercise, I couldn't sleep. I was in a very dark and bleak place. And it was like one day to the next I changed from being happy and in control to a completely broken person. I gradually got help, some fairly intense counselling, where of course I realised that the miscarriage was just a trigger and that there were all sorts of other things going in my life that I hadn't properly worked through. I took mild antidepressant medication for a few months and I started meditation, which helped me a lot. In fact, I still use it now. What this taught me was that I wasn't as strong and as resilient as I thought. I think it also taught me to reach out for support when I need it. Usually when things go wrong, I turn in on myself and find it difficult to reach out. But I reach out more now, and I found that counselling in particular has helped me on more than one occasion in my life when I've experienced trauma. So coming back to where I started, I think we're all vulnerable to triggers that can tip us over from mental health to mental distress. And I think it's important that we find ways to cope and exit those dark places. You know, looking back, maybe my miscarriage was a good thing because I think I learnt to be a little bit kinder to myself through that experience and hopefully a little bit more empathetic to others. Thank you.
My name is Alejandra Corao. I am a pediatrician by profession and I want to share my story, not from the doctor's point of view, but from the patient I was. My story begins some months before my breast cancer diagnosis in October 2014. I learned the hard way that it is not possible to have physical health without mental health. In 2014, I lived in Venezuela, a country with a deep social, political, and economic crisis that affected every aspect of my life. Around 10 months before my cancer diagnosis, I had been robbed at gunpoint stepping out of a meeting with the Minister of Health after celebrating World AIDS Day. Living in a country with constant shortages of medicine, food, and high criminality, I had decided that I needed to be even more efficient. It was common that in the middle of an important meeting, I had to coordinate the purchase of basic needs like toilet paper through the black market, or that on my way to my children's school, I had to cross barricades. But the most serious issue was how I lived each of those events. I lived them with anguish, with despair, anxiety, and fear. But above all, I lived them with denial. I denied at all times that it was affecting me. I frequently had insomnia, migraines, chest oppression, and still I didn't want to see the signs. I kept working and being efficient in everything I did, but now I know my body was taking the toll. Days after my breast cancer diagnosis, I read the following phrase: "The body whispers and if one does not hear it, it will eventually scream. On October 19th, 2014, my body screamed. And then I did seek for help and understood that in order to heal from my cancer, I had to heal my mind. I had a lot of psycho-emotional support from my family, my friends. I had the support of my supervisor. I had the support of my co-workers. And above all, I had the support of a therapist. It turned out that after that armed robbery, I had developed a post-traumatic stress disorder that was still affecting me, even 10 months after the incident. Today, it has been almost 6 years since that cancer diagnosis. And I must say today, I am much healthier than before. Now, I am aware of the signals that my body whispers to me. Now, I do know that maintaining a work-life balance is essential for my health. Now I know that I can and that I should say no when I'm tired. And it's just not a no to my supervisor. It is also a no to my children, to my mother. It is a no to my husband, and it's even a no to myself sometimes.
3 years ago, I went through a work experience that led me to develop mental health problems. This involved bullying, isolation, and retaliation by a line manager in my duty station for a year. Because I was even threatened by him, I was eventually evacuated to another duty station. There are some times when going to work was like going to prison. I have chronic insomnia, musculoskeletal and body pains, migraines, and at the time negative copings, including workaholism, to avoid painful thoughts and feelings. I was put on medical treatment, which led to physical and psychological dependence on medication. Some of these health issues are still present with me today. It's a long road to recovery. Since I started therapy, I've never felt stigmatized or labeled. Being now in a bully-free environment, I received a lot of support from the then acting country director, the UN director, Human Resources Department, the RST director, and WHO Medical Services, and my colleagues were good. I encourage colleagues to reach out for help. I was also in denial for a long time, refusing to acknowledge what I'd gone through. The most important thing is to take the first step. The rest becomes easier day by day.
So when I was in Baghdad, my job entailed interviewing refugees because there was a war and these refugees were going to be resettled outside of Iraq to Western countries. So part of the process is that we interview them and get their story of persecution. And all of these stories are very different. Sometimes it's persecution based on religion, on ethnicity, on your religious sect, on your gender, on your sexual orientation. It's everything, persecution about everything. And every single person comes to you and thinks of you as their savior. And you are there thinking to yourself that I'm just a normal human being, but I'm just doing humanitarian work to help them. But for them, their story means everything. When they tell you their story, they tell you their story with a lot of passion. It's very heartbreaking for them and for you to sit there. And because of the diversity of the stories and the miseries that you hear every single day, it's quite disheartening that you get disconnected after a while. You know, when you start doing this job, you are very concerned at the beginning, but if after 6 months, you start being emotionally disconnected, and I think that's very bothersome. You know, it's quite bothering that you as a person, as a human being, you view people's stories and miseries as just a case number, you know, because they come to you as a case number. So when I leave and go for R&R and I go and sit with my family in my normal life without any persecution, without any problems, and I start talking, reflecting about what I heard and how these people who are not very far away from me, because when I was in Baghdad, I went to R&R to Amman, which is about an hour flight away. It's two different worlds, you know, it's only an hour flight, but it's a different world. And then you're sitting there reflecting about how these people are in a total mess, and you are here enjoying the luxury of a normal life with no problems. So these two polar opposites are very stressful as a person. It stresses me out so much, and at night I get nightmares, let me say, of me interviewing these people, and sometimes I wonder what happened to them. I genuinely wondered if their case got accepted, did they resettle? But until this day, I think I suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, because of what I heard and what I saw from these people. And I think it will affect me forever. I don't think I will ever come back or go back to the person that I was before going to Baghdad.
The end of this. I think the message from all the contributions, and especially through the more personal testimonials, becomes quite clear that there are so many factors. Mental health is such a diverse mix of factors, that there can be physical issues at play, there can be sort of also emotional things that happen to you because of things that happen to events like in your life at work or in your private life that trigger something more profound. And that's why it's great that we do have the staff counselors, who can all be a first point of help. And we will also make sure that you get again their contact details on our website afterwards. And in the meantime, some of you have already asked a few questions, and thanks to those speakers who have already started responding to some of them. But so I encourage you to read the Q&A. Questions going to the direction of how do you switch off from work, especially during a time working from home, and also how do you challenge your negative voices in your head, something mentioned by Nancy. How do you do that in practice? Can you maybe give some examples? And also someone asking, being about to start meditating, what is maybe some of the advice on starting to meditate? Would any of the speakers like to elaborate on some of the responses that were already given and add to those? So Mary already recommended, get your routine, be nice to yourself. That's useful advice. Anyone would like to take these?
I'm happy to help, but which question are you asking about specifically? Thanks, Ali.
So I think they are all a bit clustered together. It's about more concrete advice on, like how do you, if you have those voices in your head, for example, as you mentioned, and I mean, meditation being one of the strategies, like how do you go about that in practice? Maybe some more concrete advice on how to get started to more actively address those issues that you're facing.
Maybe this is the latest one I've seen. What resources would you suggest for someone beginning to meditate? I think that there's many different tools for meditation. There's also some apps which you might have heard of, such as Headspace or Calm and so forth. And so you can try the different ones that suit you. You can also find many options on YouTube. If you're doing, for instance, mindfulness through breathing exercises, you can start with shorter time frames of like 3 to 5 minutes, and then you work yourself up to 10 or 15 minutes. So that's a gradual increment in exercising our mind to stay focused in the here and now and be mindful of the here and now. So that's one suggestion I would say, in addition to what's been answered.
Maybe a very practical way to get started on this are the mindfulness sessions that we were offering here at the Commons, kindly offered by Mary Leahy and some other colleagues. They're still available also on our website, and we hope to get back to offering some of these sessions. Very practical way, in addition to the ones you just mentioned with the with the apps that also offer mindfulness training. Anyone else on more practical advice?
Yes. Hi, this is Mary. So yeah, as we've been speaking there, I've been trying to answer the questions in the Q&A, and there's some very good questions. So definitely thank you, Vivienne, for reminding everyone that we do live and recorded sessions here in collaboration with the UN Knowledge and Learning Commons. And also today we have a session outside, a yoga session with Ursula, who's one of our volunteers. And that will also be recorded, but that's very important. And then, like Nancy said, there's some free sessions with Headspace, but you can also use something like Insight Timer. All of them and CAM, they offer free sessions, and with Insight Timer, it's good because they're in a range of different languages. So I think there's also, what's important is there was a good question there about managers and you know, the stress that's there in the UN for all of us. Someone says here that it's an urgent matter, and you know, I think that's very important. How do we have training for managers? So I think maybe I'll start to answer this question by saying it's important for all of us as human beings to make a change. Like we're trying to implement the mental health strategy from the UN. You may have heard of it. It's over. There's a period of 5 years where we're trying to implement it, and Therese Fitzpatrick will be speaking about it tomorrow. But it starts with all of us. So each of you, I would say, bringing your personal experiences from your life, like the two speakers we had, the lady from UNAIDS and from OCHA, and then just having those conversations in your team. Like Nancy's survey showed, there was, you know, we have these preconceptions, or we might think of a certain thing, and then when somebody, a staff member, tells us that they're not doing well, how do we as individuals also support them? And some of these people will be managers or supervisors. So, but I think it's a really great question, and it's very important that we think that can start with each of us, and we can all make a difference. And then as time goes by, you might do a course or you might learn something, and please do share it with one another. And this will help make the UN, I think, a better place to work and a safer place to work for all of us. I don't know if maybe Jorge or Nancy would like to add anything.
No, that only to add that a training for managers on mental health in the workplace is coming up very soon. So this is a short announcement, but also to understand that mental health is increasing, is not decreasing, and is expected that will get even worse. I would like to say that this is a silent pandemic, because we know if we think about it's 1 every 5, it means that if we have 100 people, 20 people have a mental health condition. The person might be sitting next to you, and very often you do not even notice because as it was already expressed, it's very silent, and yeah, it's not like a physical illness. So be very mindful to yourself, and be very mindful also to the needs, the mental health needs of your colleagues. And treat health as mental and physical health. Try to treat this equally. This is the message I would like to say. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mental health and physical health go very much hand in hand. That's one thing we've learned today. I would like to thank our speakers as we are coming to an end. They are all available individually, and if you're not from any of the organizations they can represent, please reach out also to the staff counselors in your organization. We will make available their contacts through our website, or you can always write to us and we can facilitate that contact. So thanks, big thank you to our very knowledgeable speakers for putting together this diverse, interesting program, lots of food for thought during this Mental Health Week. Also, thank you to our Commons events team in the background who have helped us to make this work technically. The slides will also be online. I think there was a question in the chat, so answer is yes, all the material will be on the website, together also with further resources. There are UN websites on mental health. There's an IC page for those who are in the UN Geneva office and the related systems. And as was mentioned earlier, this was an event part of Mental Health Week, and there are more events upcoming in the course of the week. Live yoga sessions in the park, weather permitting. Now the sun is out, so it might work. So you can check the program on the ICIG webpage that was just shared also in the chat. And there will be another event tomorrow, a presentation by the UN Mental Health Board with Therese Fitzpatrick, a conversation with different international agencies, the EIEA, the Atomic Energy Agency, WFP, World Food Programme, IOM, the Migration Office, and also UNFPA, the Population Fund. And on 9th of October, we have a webinar in French, Diversité, Coopération, quel enjeu pour la santé mentale au travail? All information on the ICIG page, which was also shared in a broadcast recently. Today's event was part of the Well at Work stream, which has been extremely popular over the past month for obvious reasons. Here at the Commons, we have other streams, other priority streams where we also share knowledge and learning in the areas of communication, innovation and technology, sustainability, diplomacy, and also partnerships. If you would like to propose events or learning opportunities, please be in touch through our email address on our website, commons.ungeneva.org. And you can also sign up to our newsletter to receive regular updates for events that are happening here at the Commons. You can provide feedback either through the website or through the QR code that's on display just now. We really would appreciate your feedback on today's session and also other sessions you may have attended, because for this, all this is new for us too. We're trying to reinvent the Commons in times of COVID as well, so your feedback is really precious. And more than online surveys, we also appreciate direct conversations, which unfortunately through team events, it's not so easy. We are refined to conversing with you through the chat box. But if you would like to give some fresh direct feedback on how we do events or today's event in particular, please do share your email addresses with the team, and we would like to connect to you for a direct conversation with a few questions that will really help us to further refine this program. I would like to leave you with the announcement of our next event, which will already be tomorrow, 8th of October at 12:30. It's about big data, and Big Data for Big Challenges is the title, the Swiss Data Cube for Environmental Monitoring, and it's part of our Conversations with Academia series, and this particular event is co-organized with the University of Geneva. Thank you all for being with us today. Please look after yourselves, stay well, be nice to yourself, take good care of yourself. Goodbye for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vivian, and thank you, colleagues. Bye-bye.